thought I would just get on really quickly to share some thoughts I had a little while ago while I was on the treadmill. And I couldn't really relax and go to sleep until I got my thoughts here. So I was listening to, um, I believe his name is Dr. Jimpnadas, and he made a video about, he's a cardiologist, and he was talking about addictions and how difficult it is for us to fast and stick to our healthy eating habits. And so, as he was beginning to talk, I thought to myself, well, one of the things that he mentioned was he said, cravings compromise thinking. Cravings compromise thinking. And I thought, well, how true is that? Because our desires oftentimes lead to destruction. And one of the things that he mentioned was how alcohol, caffeine, cocaine, heroin, food, they all behave the same way when we ingest them. We all respond to them the same way, and especially when we become hooked on them, we respond the same way our body does, and so we become addicted to them quite easily. And he mentioned how typically, if one person is like a smoker, and typically what you would see with sometimes often a smoker, somebody who decides to quit smoking, they generally pick up weight because then they go to eating a lot. And so he was saying, like somebody who smokes, they go to eating a lot, then they gain weight and they become addicted to food. Like they become a food addict. And then he was like, well, if you're a food addict, it's then easy to become a drug addict. And then I thought to myself, well, then if you're a drug addict, it's very easy to become a sex addict or maybe even develop a gambling addiction, because all of them quite lead kind of into each other in some way. And in order to have some of the characteristics, I think, of being an addict, sometimes if you are in it pretty deep, you would go through pretty lengthy extremes in order to get your next hit. And so yeah, I just thought that was really true. And so when I thought about how we go from one addiction to the next, and even myself, I can really relate to that, because when I was in my 20s, I was addicted to smoking weed, and then I was smoking cigarettes, and and so it's just, and then I had a gambling issue. And so I can understand like exactly what he's saying. It's so true. And so I just wanted to just talk about this, because I feel like right now with technology and culture is so easily, and even with the food, our food choices are really becoming more and more difficult to go into a store to be able to pick healthy, reasonably priced food. It's really becoming difficult. And so it gives more room for addiction. And I just really, it was just so heavy on me when he was talking, because I understand what it is to battle through addiction. And right now, I'm currently on my health journey. And so I'm trying to understand my choices with food and why I choose some of the things that I eat, and what makes me choose the times that I eat, and what triggers me to want to eat certain foods. And so it's about also developing that pattern recognition. And one of the things that I also thought about was, along with swinging from one addiction to the next and how it creates like a monkey bar sort of effect. I also was thinking about it in terms of the Bible and how David and Goliath, and how I don't remember exactly word for word, but I remember that when David went to go fight Goliath, that it said that he took his stone and he hit Goliath right in the middle of the forehead, and it said the stone sank in the middle of his forehead and he killed Goliath. And so I was thinking to myself how that spoke to me in this moment was is that he was able to conquer his giant, conquer Goliath, because he was able um to take him down like with his mind. Like it was more of him conquering his giant, but I think it was significant because it talked about the stone sinking into Goliath's forehead. And in our forehead is our prefrontal cortex. That's this front part of our brain, and that's our decision making. Our headquarters, right? And I thought to myself, well, when we are in addiction and we're battling certain cravings and things like that, and we're really into it, it's because our prefrontal cortex is offline. And Dr. Gymnatus, he referenced it as our prefrontal cortex going on vacation. And so I thought to myself, well, that seems about right. But as I thought about the Bible and how it related to David defeating his giant, it's because we need our prefrontal cortex in order to be able to have insight. Because once you have insight, then you can start working on the inside of yourself. And so that's what it is. It's about getting your brain back online to be able to have insight and begin to work on yourself from the inside out. And so without insight, you can't really pivot or change because you're not even aware. Unless someone from the outside or whatever points something out to you, but really change starts internally. Like, you have to be willing to recognize, I think this might be like in sobriety, um like AA or something, where you have to be able to recognize that there's an issue, that there's something that needs to be changed or tweaked, or there's something that's wrong that needs to be addressed. So it's about having insight to be able to recognize that there's something to even look at. And once you have the insight, you'll be able to change yourself from the inside. And that's what I thought was so key about getting your prefrontal cortex back online and, conquering your giant. And so everybody has a different giant. I don't know what your giant might be. Like I said, for me, I used to smoke a lot, cigarettes and drugs and all of that. And then I'm now understanding that I haven't had the best relationship with food. And so now I'm trying to piece that together and figure out that. So it's about figuring out what your drug of choice is, and what changes can you make to be able to, I guess, not even changes right away, but I guess just becoming more aware of patterns. And that's really what it is, being able to have an awareness of yourself and patterns that you've had. And so yeah, it's about how cravings compromise your thinking. And he also talked about how when we go through great lengths to fulfill a craving, we also are in recovery because your body is like a seesaw, and it tries its best to keep you in balance. And he talked about how, like, once we flood ourselves with whatever drug of choice it is, we are often put in periods of recovery, because once you have the reward, often there's a recovery period. So for example, with me and caffeine, that's like my giant right now is caffeine. I'm recognizing that, and it's really really a tough one for me. It's tough because I do like my caffeine. I really do. I feel like without the caffeine, I've gotten better, but it's still an issue I can recognize, because without the caffeine, I'm like not with it. And so that's my giant right now as well. So I'm aware of that. But it is the same thing of, like, I heard a psychologist, I think his name is Andrew Huberman or something, but he talked about how, like, caffeine drinkers, sometimes if you delay your caffeine intake, for an hour or two after you wake up, it helps. And so what I actually done in the morning was start, like, I replaced my morning coffee with cacao and makeup powder, and that's what I'll have in the morning. But I know, like, hour and a half, 2 hours after that, I am searching for caffeine. So again, it's a work in progress for me, but um it's about the reward thing. I do have my caffeine. I crave my caffeine. I look forward to the caffeine. I enjoy the caffeine and have the reward and perk up, but then a couple of hours later I'm coming down. And so it's that, paying that price. And so we all have a price to pay for whatever unhealthy desires we have. There's a price to be paid, actually, for everything. So he was talking about how we seek out the reward, and then we often end up in recovery. And I was just thinking about how, when we're in these addiction loops, it keeps us in cycles of shame and in cycles of recovery. Shame, denial, guilt, and all the things that come along with having any type of addiction. And so I just also want to just encourage someone, like, if you're going through something and having a hard time, recovery is possible. It is. And it's coming from somebody who's been through a couple of things, and I've come out on the other side. And I'm also continuously going through my process right now of recognizing what other changes I can make. And, I saw a sign on the freeway, and the sign said, "Sobriety requires no luck." It said, "Sobriety requires no luck." And so it's of, and even in the Bible, it talks about being sober, be vigilant, be sober. And so if you can become aware and have insight, then you can start changing yourself from the inside out, and start making whatever small changes you can make initially to get you going in the right direction. And it's it might seem like it doesn't really have an impact at first, but I'm telling you, like, even with me and the caffeine, delaying my caffeine intake just a couple of hours after I wake up has helped me a lot. And even when I quit smoking cigarettes when I was in my 20s, it was like I would delay my next cigarette and then my next one. And so it's about maybe delaying the instant gratification and that need to have your next hit, but it's also coming to it, and realizing, like, there's going to be a price to pay in terms of pain. And it won't be easy, but it'll be totally worth it, because the whole point is to not be dependent on substances and things to generate this false sense of happiness, and to not use things as a crutch in order to get through your day and to be able to interact with people or to be able to just deal with life. It's about not having a crutch. So, yeah, and I'll just share this quick story too really quickly about the whole food addiction thing. So, a couple of days ago I was talking to my mom, and my mom is in a nursing home, and she often asks me and my sister to like bring her things like snacks and pop and all the unhealthy things that she wants in her room. She always asks us to bring her stuff. And sometimes we will do it just to make her happy, even though it's not really like the healthiest thing to do, but I find myself doing it anyway sometimes, right? So I just took her some stuff a couple of weeks ago, and then a couple of days ago I was on the phone with her, and she's like, "Yeah, Nina, can you bring me up some more snacks?" And like she's like cupcakes and donuts and chips and all these things, right? And I'm like, and mind you, just like 5 minutes prior, she was just talking to me about all the health things that she was going through, like health concerns, even new health concerns that she's having. And then right after she talks about that, she's asking me to bring her up unhealthy stuff. And it's like, and I was like, Mom, you can't keep eating all this stuff. And she's like, I know, but just one more time, bring me up some more stuff, just one more time. And I laughed. It wasn't really funny, but it was funny because it was a instant revelation. And I said to her, I said, Mom, you sound like a drug addict. And she was like, and she started laughing so hard because she realized, like, she was like, "You're right, I do." And I was like, "Yeah." You was like, "Just one." That's what drug addicts say. That's what people who are, in substance abuse and in toxic relationships, even, we say one more time and we'll never do it again, and just one more hit and one more. We always do that. One more. We think that we think that every time will be the last time when we decide we're going to stop doing something. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't, especially if we relapse, right? But anywho, I was just getting her to acknowledge that how she sounds, it sounds like she is an addict and she has like a problem. And when I made it aware to, when I brought the awareness to her, she was like, "Yeah, you're exactly right." And then in that same moment, as she realized what I was saying to her and she was agreeing with me, she also said, "You know what, Nina? I'm sitting here thinking in my mind as you said that I'm already missing I'm already thinking about how I'm going to miss my donuts and cupcakes and things like that as I'm sitting here talking to you." So she was like basically saying after she has this last uh, batch of snacks or whatever she's wanting me to bring up there, she's already in her mind thinking about her withdrawal and how she's going to feel when she doesn't have any more. And again, this spoke to me so, I don't even want to say deeply tonight, but kinda, because it also just brought me to, I was reading Dopamine Nation. I believe it's by Anna Lemke, but I might be incorrect on that, but I think that's her name. Dopamine Nation. She was talking about in the book, she was saying how people with addiction often are like, after they have their hit of something, whatever their drug of choice is, oftentimes they'll have their next hit not really seeking that pleasure that they once had necessarily, but it's often to avoid the withdrawal that they're having. They don't want to go through withdrawal or the pain, and so they want to have their next hit so they don't have to experience that. And that's exactly what my mom was telling me. Even though she wasn't going through withdrawal at that particular moment, she was already in her mind replaying what withdrawal might be like without her sugar fix and her pop and all this stuff she's asking me for. So it's also that, it's like also coming to an understanding of knowing like once you're hooked on something, whatever it is, food, drugs, sex, whatever it is, it's like you also have to understand that there will be a point where you are going to grieve that stuff and miss it, and it'll be painful, but it's also going through that fire and knowing that you can come out of it. And it's possible. Like recovery is possible. And I don't really, it doesn't really matter what it is. Recovery is possible. It is. Even if you relapse, you can start over. It's about every day, God's mercy is made new. And so perhaps you fell off the wagon. Perhaps you got off track somewhere. It's been a day or 2 days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months, whatever it is. Maybe you feel like you've gotten off track and you feel like you just given up, or that it's impossible, or like why bother trying. But it's never too late to start again. Every day you wake up is another chance. So begin again and just start over. Why not? It's better than continuing a cycle that you know isn't good for you. And imagine what it would be like if one day you woke up and you realized that you no longer crave that thing you once thought you couldn't live without. But you would never know what that's like if you don't go through the process. Go through the process. So, yeah, recovery is possible, becoming sober is possible, and it's about taking charge of your brain and gaining insight so you can change your inside. So, yeah, I just thought I would come on and share that really quickly because I just could not rest until I got that out. So, yeah, sobriety is possible. You can do it.